All right, so I think we can go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you everyone for being here today. I would like you to know that this meeting is recorded and we'll be hosting this webinar as a video afterwards. So therefore, if you miss anything or you need to review it or you need to send it to somebody else, you're able to do that. This is an introduction to Priority Matrix HIPAA. My name is Hai Nguyen. My contact is hi@affluence.com. So please feel free to reach out to me afterwards or at any point regarding any questions around our solution. And with that, I'm going to get started. I want you to know that there's also Pablo who's on the line. So if you have any questions, you should be able to send a message in the chat and Pablo should be able to answer you. Or otherwise, we can also respond to you afterwards. So please feel free to leverage the chat portion of this webinar in order to ask any questions that are pertinent or on top of mind. With that, we're going to get started. So prioritization is hard, but Priority Matrix makes it easy. So Priority Matrix is a comprehensive email, priority, and project management software to help teams manage emails, conduct efficient meetings, and get real-time status updates on projects and priorities. Priority Matrix HIPAA is actually a separate solution that builds on top of Priority Matrix Core and adds HIPAA compliance. As you know, there are many complications or intricacies around managing more sensitive data, and Priority Matrix HIPAA is designed to do that. One quick note I want to mention is the website access for Priority Matrix HIPAA is HIPAA.pm. So that's actually a very easy way for you to go to there and then get redirected to the Priority Matrix HIPAA solution. So what makes Priority Matrix different? First of all, it's the only project management software that leverages the 4-quadrant method as a core methodology to help promote effective prioritization. Is Microsoft 365 security certified. We leverage AI to help you achieve your goals. And then we integrate into Microsoft Team Meetings, has one-on-one view for seamless work with your managers and direct reports, has templates that you can build and save for your organization, and then available as a SaaS solution, a HIPAA solution, an Azure GovCloud solution, as well as managed private Azure deployment. Today, we're focusing on the HIPAA component. Some quick notes for those who are here when you book this webinar, we're looking at the HIPAA solution, but note that there's a lot of common capabilities with our standard solution, but that our HIPAA solution is actually hosted separately. So what that means is if you're using our standard solution today and you go to the HIPAA app, you might not see all that data. However, for existing paying or licensed customers, you can request a data migration if you want to move from the standard solution to the HIPAA solution. And then we also have BAA agreement available for enterprise customers and then available as an enterprise deployment. And so Priority Matrix HIPAA is available as a web app, which is at HIPAA.pm and inside Microsoft Teams and Outlook. But there's no native desktop or mobile apps compared to our standard solution, which do have the native and the mobile apps. A lot of the functionality are the same. So in today's presentation, you'll see that I'll highlight some capabilities in the HIPAA app. But if you use the standard app, you get all of those and actually a little bit more. So why do organizations use Priority Matrix? First of all, it's very easy to get started. With Priority Matrix, even our HIPAA solution, you can simply sign in using your Microsoft credential and immediately you can get started. And so you can actually deploy Priority Matrix within minutes and be able to leverage a lot of our capabilities almost instantly. The second aspect of it is easy access from anywhere. So what that means is that Priority Matrix allows you to access all your data on whether you're on the mobile device, inside Teams in both mobile as well as on your desktop and within Outlook. And the other component is the broad use cases that Priority Matrix can serve. So unlike traditional project management software, which can be too cumbersome or too complex for an individual who's not a project manager, Priority Matrix allow anyone within the organization, everything from the financial side of the organization, to the product side, to the engineering side, as well as field users. So Priority Matrix allow all these different parts of your organization to communicate together in order to come to a common understanding of what the priorities are. So let me step back for a second, because I want to mention the core fundamentals behind Priority Matrix. So there's a quote that's attributed to former President Eisenhower that says, "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." So the idea there is that if you are to look at all the things you have to do today, what are the things that you really should be focusing your time on, your attention to? And the reality is, not everything that you have on your plate is truly important. So here's something that I would like to ask you to do. Imagine if you were to take out a piece of paper right now and start writing down everything that's on your mind with respect to what you have to do for your work or your life goals, or your plan. And now take that list and start propagating it into these 2x2 matrix, categorize them into these buckets of the things you got to do now, the things you have to plan for, the things you should delegate to others, as well as everything else that may not belong in any of those buckets yet. So the idea of taking everything you have and then separating them into their importance and then their urgency is a way for us to communicate to ourselves, hey, this is where I should really be focusing my time. So now if you took this piece of paper and you took all those things that you wrote down, and instead of putting them in a list, put them into this 2x2 matrix, right? The top left are the things you really should be focusing on, and then the top right are the things you should be planning for. Then you take this concept and you walk around the office and you start comparing notes with your teammates, with your coworkers, with your managers, with your direct reports. Do you agree? Do you agree with everything that they have on their piece of paper? And then do they agree with yours? And if there's discrepancy, that's where Priority Matrix is valuable. Now, you can imagine Priority Matrix as being a digital version of that piece of paper because it's floating around. You are able to communicate to everyone else what your priorities are, and they're able to communicate to you what your priorities are. And that's where Priority Matrix shines. So the hardest part about using Priority Matrix is categorizing and putting everything into those buckets. And this is where users and people who are first users to Priority Matrix face the most challenge, because you have all these things, all these tasks, all these items that you have to do, and yet at the same time, you don't know where they belong. And so our argument is that if you're able to take all those work that you have and start putting into that 2x2 matrix, so you understand what are the things that are truly important and what are the things that are truly urgent, and then be able to go and do that up front, that's half the battle. Half the battle is deciding where to spend your time. And then the second component of it is that success from using Priority Matrix isn't from finding what everyone agrees on, right? If you and your whole organization agree on every single thing that you have out there, then that's easy. You don't need a software application. You're good to go. You're able to start your day and know exactly what you have to do, and everyone else doing the exact same thing. But if you're like the vast majority of organization, the vast majority of people out there, you end up having far more to do than the resources to do them. So then what that means is that you really can only work on a smaller portion of everything that's on your plate. And that's what we talk about when we talk about prioritization. That's what we talk about when we talk about putting them into the bucket of the things that you have to do now and then do later. And then focusing everything, all your resources available on the 25% of the tasks that are actually critical. So a couple of points about the Priority Matrix features. Of course, we have everything related to collaboration. So what that means is you can go and you take that 2x2 matrix that I mentioned, and you're able to take those action items and you're able to delegate to others. And you can do it during meetings. You can do it on your own time. And then you have the calendar and the Gantt chart view. We have probably one of the deepest integration inside Teams and Outlook. And so if you were looking at our previous, our standard SaaS app, we integrate with almost everything and inside Teams, and we actually have really powerful AI integrations there. And then the other component is there's what Priority Matrix does is it puts it takes all these things that you have and flips it into a people-centric way of looking at all the data that you have. And then, of course, everything is synchronized and you have a full history of everything related to your task and your projects, which is really powerful from a compliance standpoint, as well as understanding what are the things, the decisions that people made many, many months or many years ago. We'll just schedule dates and reminders. And then there's workload report, status tracking as well. So these are some of the capabilities inside Priority Matrix that we'll go over. So I want to mention a couple of use cases, some example use cases, and then we'll jump right into the product demo. So for example, inside Priority Matrix, we have an example use case of making your one-on-one meetings more productive. So instead of looking at all the tasks you have to do from a project standpoint, Priority Matrix is able to flip that around and show everything you have to do for another person. So that could be your manager, that could be your colleague. And so as you know, you're probably working on so many different initiatives, so many different projects, and with so many different people. One of the challenge we always have is on a single day, you might be, switching context constantly between all these different projects and initiatives that you're working on. So what Priority Matrix does is, instead of looking at it from the perspective of a project, we look at it from the perspective of people. So what are the things you are responsible for, or that you owe to your manager in particular, right? No matter what project it is. That's the one-on-one meeting. Another example use case of Priority Matrix is the ability to prioritize your email. So, you probably use Outlook so much and you're flagging so many different emails, but the question is, are you getting back to those emails? Are you making sure that those emails are actually addressed and prioritized and that they're not falling through the cracks? So Priority Matrix has an Outlook add-in that allows you to convert emails into tasks, delegate it, set reminder, due dates, etc. And so you never lose track of that email, especially things that are sent, months or weeks ago, and then you have to deal with them now. So the Priority Matrix HIPAA solution includes the Outlook integration as well. Another use case in Priority Matrix is the ability to save templates. And let's just say you have standard operating procedures as you're working through so many different initiatives inside your organization, everything from employee onboarding to projects that may have tasks that repeat over and over again. And so those are the things that once you create that matrix inside Priority Matrix and you create the action items and so forth, you can actually save them as templates, allowing you to save a lot of time when you launch another initiative just like that, or be able to share those templates with others within your organization. And then another use case is in workload management. As you know, excuse me, one of the things we see over and over again is that individuals have different workload, right? It's virtually impossible to have everyone to have a balanced workload. So within Priority Matrix, we're actually able to display that information very easily to show managers how their team members are stacking up with respect to what are the things that are on their plates, what are the things that are due, with number of Priority Matrix tasks, the amount of effort during any point in time. Our argument here is not that you should go and overload people, but instead what you want to be able to do is understand that some people might be overworked, and therefore being able to understand that if you want to get something done in week X or whatever, but there's a lot of things that are already due on that week, then don't expect to make a lot of progress. And so the workload report takes all the data that you have inside Priority Matrix, and then again, showing it in a different way, showing it from a time-centric point of view. So you understand what are the things that are on people's plate at any point in time. And of course, Priority Matrix works on the web as well. Even for the HIPAA solution, even though there isn't an iOS or an Android application, you simply go to HIPAA.pm, you sign in, and you're able to see everything you have there on the mobile web app, and it readjusts into your screen size, whether it's small or big. And then, of course, one of the challenges that customers and users face all the time is understanding what are the things that I need to work on. What are the things that are actually relevant? And so Priority Matrix has this concept called the alerts, which is inside the home view, telling you, hey, these are the things that change that are relevant to you that you should look at. And then at the same time, these are the things that require your attention today. based on the due dates, right? These are the things that you actually should work on today, tomorrow, next week, and maybe some of the stuff that you actually didn't get a chance to look at yesterday, etc. So I'm going to jump into the demo now, but I do want to show some additional resources. So this webinar, as I mentioned, will be recorded and we'll post it on our website. And then the website to go to the HIPAA solution is HIPAA.pm. So if you're looking at this solution and you haven't tried it before, point your browser there and it'll redirect you into the HIPAA compliance solution. Again, I do want to remind everyone here that the HIPAA app is different from our standard app. What that means is that if you're signing into the HIPAA app and you don't see your task because you sign up for a trial or use our standard solution prior, then just keep that in mind. And again, if you're already an existing customer of Priority Matrix and you want to migrate to the HIPAA solution, that's something that we can also support you. So with that, I'm going to jump into a live demo. And then one other note, I think we mentioned there's a lot of people that actually came in after the webinar started. But if you have any questions whatsoever, you can send it into the chat during this webinar and we'll try to answer them. All right. Okay, so now I've jumped into a live demo of our HIPAA solution. One thing to note here is that if you are on a HIPAA solution, you know that it's HIPAA with this green icon. So I think I mentioned that we have our standard solution. So if you're on a standard SaaS app, this icon is blue. If you're on a government app, this icon is orange. And then if you're on HIPAA, this icon is green. So that's just a really quick indication for you to know whether or not you're on our HIPAA solution or not. And so when you start Priority Matrix, that four quadrants that I mentioned, what are the things you have to do now, do later, delegate, postpone? That's the core, right? And so when I have a project, this is what it looks like. And for me, when I start my day, I kind of wish my matrix was this empty, but it never is. But imagine if this was your matrix, then you can start working on adding tasks that are actually relevant to you. So adding tasks is extremely easy. So for example, let's say I need to add a task, which is to check in on my report. Okay, so I'm going to add that task, and you see how I can add it into any particular quadrant, and I can drag and drop really easily. But now, maybe there's additional things that you can do. So when you select that task, on the right-hand side, it shows you what project it's in, the name of the task, which means you can edit here, and then you have the owner, so who's responsible, and progress, how much progress has been made, how much effort this takes, and then you're able to set reminders and due dates. So there's a question always, which is, what is the difference between reminders versus due date? There's a huge difference. I highly, highly recommend that you use due dates. And the reason is when you set due dates, then Priority Matrix is able to take that and start displaying that and its data in a lot of different other areas in your calendar, in your Gantt chart, etc. But having something due in 3 weeks, if you set the due date but you don't set reminders, then you might not get started on time. So again, for example, tax season is over, but imagine if you have to do your taxes. Yes, it's due April 18 or April 15, but then you want to get started 2 weeks prior, right? So then therefore you can set reminders prior to that. So let's just say I do here. I can do something due on June 1st, okay? And then I can set recurring tasks there, by the way, as needed. But now I want to actually remind myself prior to that, so maybe the day prior. So you can see how I can actually set the reminder. I can set the due date. Priority Matrix will now send me a reminder that I should check in on this item before it's due. So that's really useful when you have a lot of tasks and you actually got to make sure that you get started on time. One thing you'll notice is that in Priority Matrix, everything that I do actually has a record to it. So right here, this is called a chat, and the chat serves two purposes. First of all, it's a place where I can communicate with other team members. So imagine if this task actually had others on it, I can actually chat with them directly about that particular task. So let me give you an example. Let's just say if you have a particular task that is really important and you've been talking to your manager about it, and maybe you're talking about it in emails, you're talking about inside Microsoft Teams, etc. The problem is 2 weeks later, 2 months later, right? And you're looking at that task, then you start wondering, hey, what did we say? Like, what was our decision there? And how did we decide on due dates? How did we decide on the status, et cetera? That's always a missing piece because everyone has different ways of communicating and different channels communicating. So with the Party Matrix chat in particular, right here is a place where it keeps the context related to this task. And so you can look at this as like an email thread with respect to only that task. And so when you have others in this particular channel, they're able to see the communication. And even a year, 2 years, 3 years later, when a decision has been made and you're reviewing it, you can look back and say, oh, okay, I see when we made that decision. I see when we set that due date. And the second part is that all the changes that you make to the task is actually kept as a record. We actually have customers where, for compliance reason, they have to show that they get certain things done at a certain time. And so you have to prove that. And so this is called an immutable history. So whatever changes that you make, it's actually tracked as part of the history. So what that means is if you set a due date, you have an original due date, and then later on you change the due date, and now you're marking the task as done, well, is it done on time, et cetera? And so, with Priority Matrix, we're able to track all of that for you and give you that record. And so that's very, very useful from a manager standpoint to be able to make sure that, the things that are important are actually done on time. So that's the chat section. The second part is the notes section. So notes, of course, you can add additional details about the task and so forth, but then you can also add subtasks. So for example, I could do subtask 1, subtask 2, subtask 3, right? So I can add subtasks pretty easily, I can add notes. And then we actually have resources. And so resources is actually additional information related to the task. Everything from files to links to such as, websites, to emails. And so that's one of the things I'll show you, which is how to actually integrate and attach an email into a Priority Matrix action item. Now, going back to the chat section, you can see how when I added those subtasks, it's all tracked here as part of the history. And then if I go back to the notes section and I mark a task as done, what happens then is, our system will go update the progress, tells me that, hey, this subtask is partially done. Now, you can always override the progress as needed, but that's just an example of how the system tracks that for you. So you saw me how I can create a task and then set due dates, set reminders, etc. Now let me show you a couple of things where we try to add some intelligence to all of this. So again, I'm going to go to here, but now let me create a task where I want to follow up with the webinar attendees. Okay, I have that. But instead of actually finishing creating the task and then setting due dates, I can actually just say due in 1 week. So when I do something like that, what Priority Matrix does is it actually interprets this using natural language. And so you can see how actually, I guess June 1st is a week from now. And so it set a due date for me, June 1st, on next Thursday. And so I don't have to go through that additional step of creating the due date. So I highly, highly recommend that you use this capability if you use Priority Matrix, which is when you create a task, set the due date directly there in the action item. Priority Matrix will try to interpret that for you. You could say due in 1 week, due next Thursday, etc. And then earlier I showed you how to set reminders, but I actually can say remind me daily. And when I do something like that, what Priority Matrix does is, again, when you see this green text, what it does is it shows that Priority Matrix is actually interpreting that as a natural language. And now the reminder is set for me, and it's going to send me a daily reminder until this task is done. So you can see how if I have something really important, Priority Matrix makes it extremely easy for me to set that. So that's the concept of a task. Now, earlier, I was showing you the idea of a project. I'm going to go to project here. When I create a brand new project, team priorities, there's a lot of details I can do here. I can add notes to the project. I can add user group. I can change and customize my color. I can actually choose between different types of matrix as well. So we have the Eisenhower Matrix, but at the same time, you're able to go and rename any of those matrix. And we actually have a lot of different templates available for you. So I'm going to create a project here. And so you can see this is the basic project. If I go to this eye icon right here, this brings me to the project details. In the project details, I can actually invite additional people, right? So if I click on this, I can invite additional folks into my team, additional team members into my project. And now I can share this with others. I can also customize this. So imagine if, maybe I think that the quadrant name fires might be more appropriate, right? Now, I can change the colors and so forth. And this is one of those things that you can do within your organization. Once you adapt Priority Matrix, you can actually set different terminologies, different guidance on how to best use the quadrants, etc. So the project themselves are customizable, the tasks themselves are customizable. Let me show you something else. So I want to switch between projects. So when I can click to here, I can go to all the projects here. This was my other project that I created earlier. I can go, you can see the quadrant view, but actually you can jump to the list view. The list view takes all the data, put it in the list, and you're able to see the things that are overdue very easily. And you can click on each of these and navigate through them. You also have the calendar view, which means showing you all the different tasks. And from this calendar view, it's time-centric. But what's neat is that you can actually reprioritize things very easily. You can just drag and drop them to reprioritize. One thing that I want to mention is even when you do, Priority Matrix keep record for you. So if someone does something and make a change that's not approved, that's very easy for you to see. Well, you also have the Gantt chart. What the Gantt chart does is it takes all your action items and you can actually link them together. You can see how these are different action items in the in the um, in the project that's shown here. And if I want to actually link tasks together, I can actually just click on link item and I can say that, this task is blocked by this task. And what that does is actually create links between these action items in terms of dependencies. And you see how now the moment I did that, task A has to be done before task B. I can drag and drop this as needed. I can actually change them, etc. So one thing I want to mention quickly is that these capabilities are a lot more powerful and not necessarily have to be used by you or other folks within your immediate team. But there may always be others within the organization that wants to take the same data that you have but view it in a different way. And so Priority Matrix gives you that flexibility, being able to go and take all the data that you have and view it from a different perspective. Now, let me jump into this thing called the one-on-one. When you go to the one-on-one, what this allows you to do is actually go to another person and see everything you have in common with that person. So for example, right now in this demo environment, I don't have a common task with Eugenia, but if I had task with her, what I can do is I can see everything I have with them and it shows here in one central place. But not only that, when I have my one-on-one meeting, I can actually create tasks very, very quickly. So check on status of report, right? I can actually create tasks directly from here without having to jump into another project. So while I'm doing my meeting, I can create tasks on the fly. That's the one thing we hear all the time, which is you'll have a meeting, you're talking about all these things that you want to do or that goals that you have during your one-on-ones with your managers or your direct reports, and then guess what, 2 weeks later or a month later you go back saying, oh yeah, I actually never wrote that down. Well, Priority Matrix sort of takes away that excuse, because when you're talking about it, go ahead and create that shared task. It invites those people automatically. If you use our natural language, you can actually set the due date automatically. Very, very easy way to just write things down, get them out of your head, and making sure that they're actually tracked and prioritized. One thing I want to show you real quick is our integration into Microsoft Teams. So if you go to Microsoft Teams, you can search the App Store for Priority Matrix HIPAA. Again, make sure you look for the HIPAA solution if you're looking for the HIPAA solution in particular, because we do, again, have the government cloud as well as a standard application. When you have Priority Matrix, you can install it, and then you can pin it on here. And when you do, you can go to the project view here. You can click on this, go to the home view, and now in the home view, it shows you everything that you have, as well as the alerts that I mentioned to you earlier. This is where tasks that maybe require my attention, the agenda are tasks that actually have due dates that I need to be concerned about. But one thing I want to show you in particular is that inside the Priority Matrix application, when I go to here, when I select a person that I chat with inside Teams, I'm actually able to add this tab called the one-on-one. So if I choose Priority Matrix here, there's something called the one-on-one and a full project view. What the full project view is it actually is you can attach a project that you have in Priority Matrix into this conversation with your team member. But you can choose a one-on-one view instead and then select the person, right? So I can select the person here. I already have one installed, so I'm going to show you that, how it looks. So when I go to this one-on-one, this is actually the standard solution, so I have a different demo environment here. But you can see actually it shows me everything I have in common with that person directly inside the Matrix chat view inside Teams. So I don't even have to go into Matrix to see the stuff I have in common with anybody. So what that means is that you can, for all the team members that you work with, simply go to the plus icon here, add Matrix one-on-one with all of them, and now you're able to create tasks really, really easily while you're in the conversation with them inside Teams. So our Teams integrations allows you to do all of that. And then not only that, when you're in the chat, you can actually attach, actually, this is our standard solution, so I'm not going to show you that one. But you're able to go and actually, if you're using the standard Matrix app, you're able to pull in Matrix task and actually send that to people directly here inside the Teams conversation. One other thing I'll show you now is our Outlook integrations. So the vast majority of customers out there use our Outlook integration as a way to manage their emails. So if you go to the App Store, so if you go to the Outlook app, either it works in both the web app as well as the native app. You go to the add-in App Store, search for Priority Matrix HIPAA, you can add that. Once you do, and you have an email that arrives, you're able to prioritize this email. Of course, you can always flag emails, right? That's what everyone does. The problem with flagging is that if you have one flag email, that's fine. If you have 100 flag emails, you're in trouble. So what Priority Matrix allows you to do is actually take that email and actually prioritize it. So the way it works is very simple. Let's say I have an email that I want to prioritize. I click on this ... I go to Priority Matrix here. I open Priority Matrix panel. What it does is it opens Priority Matrix on the right-hand side here. I'm able to capture email. When I click on capture email, what it does is it allows me to take this email and convert it into an action item. So I'm going to move it into that team priorities project. I can choose what quadrant it belongs in. I can assign it to people. I can set a due date, but I'm just going to go ahead and press create action item. So what it just did is actually create a task inside Priority Matrix from this email. And what's neat is that actually that email is attached here. So imagine if I was assigning it to somebody else, right, to another team member, they can actually view the email. And the content of the email itself is in the notes. So a use case, let's just say a customer send you an email, and that or an external client, external person in particular, send you an email, and now you want to go and you want to assign that to the relevant person, or you want to pull somebody else to have that conversation. Well, Priority Matrix allows you to go and convert that email into the task, assign it to the person, and the other people can actually go and review that email and actually take actions on it. What's neat is that you can have a chat about this, right, directly inside here. So again, in the old ways, what you would do is you would forward that email to somebody else, and then you start chatting about it and say, hey, could you do X, Y, Z, etc. What Priority Matrix allows you to do instead is create that action item, prioritize in a certain quadrant so that everyone knows that, hey, this is an important email. And then not only that, you can chat about it inside the Priority Matrix conversation here. And what's neat about it is that the customer doesn't necessarily get a bunch of emails, right? Because we don't want more emails to pollute your inbox. Instead, you have this context-based conversation, and you can talk about it. You can set due dates, you can add notes, you can add files and documents, etc., directly from here. So that's how this works. But I can also take an email and I can attach it to an existing task. So earlier, you saw how I pressed a capture email here to convert into a task, but actually I can also take the same email, and if I hover over an existing task, I'm able to attach it here as well. One of the things that's really helpful here is actually to keep things within context. Again, let's say if it's an email about a certain initiative or from an external customer and you already have a task for them, you can actually take that email and attach it to an existing task. Now, everyone who's involved within that task actually has a similar context. So again, to summarize how the email integration works is it's just that you have so many different channels right now of communicating, right? You're getting messages in Teams, you're getting messages by email, and then your manager might be using various task management software to assign you tasks and say, hey, do this, and then somebody else send you an email and say, hey, do that. So what Priority Matrix does is it actually brings it all together into one central place. So then when you're inside Outlook, you see everything you have to do. When you're inside Teams, you see everything you have to do. And then when you go to the web app, you see everything you have to do. But not only that, you see it within the context of the priorities. So you saw how I converted that email to a task. It shows here in one central place. I don't have to switch context. I don't have to jump to another application. I can see everything that I have to do directly here. So this is where I actually will pause this particular presentation. And, the reason is there's a lot more capabilities inside Priority Matrix, but what I wanted to do today is actually show you just what Priority Matrix HIPAA is capable of doing. So for those who are familiar with Priority Matrix already, Priority Matrix HIPAA is very similar. There's a couple things that's missing in order to be compliant for HIPAA reason, but at the same time, Priority Matrix has that Outlook integration, has that Microsoft Teams integration, and then works really well inside the web app. And again, if you go to HIPAA.pm on your desktop, on Windows or Mac, or on your mobile device or on your iPad, you see a very, very similar interface, and all your data is available in one central place. There's a lot of other integrations that we actually have available and that we will be also migrating to the HIPAA solution, including the ability for you to actually have connectors with Microsoft. So for example, I'm just going to show you really briefly here. You're able to, for example, ingest Microsoft Forms into Priority Matrix using Power Automate, and that works with the HIPAA solution as well. And this is something that we provide support for our customers to do. And we're able to also do a lot of other automation through the Microsoft Power Automate system as well. With that, I'm going to end this conversation, this presentation, and I want to again let me show you the resources we have here. Again, the website is HIPAA.pm. Please feel free to send us a message to support at Affluence or myself, hi at Affluence, if you have any particular feedback. And then this webinar will be recorded and we'll display it on affluence.com/webinars. If you have any open questions, please shoot us an email. We're more than happy to dive further into it. Again, this was meant to be introductory, so we actually didn't cover all the capabilities. If you want to see the full capabilities of Priority Matrix, you can also see some of our other webinars, our introduction as well as our advanced webinars that covers the Gantt charts, the workload reports in a little bit more details.
I allowed everybody to unmute themselves and open the camera. So we have a few minutes. We're at time, but if you want to spend 5-10 minutes asking any questions, we'd be happy to address them. And I believe Mona has one, so go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi.
If there's feedback, maybe you can type it and then we can read it out.
You can also go ahead and send it in the chat, and I'd be happy to read it out and answer it as well. If you go to affluence.com/webinars, this URL here, you can actually see all the other recorded webinars. So we actually have deep dive into basic capabilities of Priority Matrix, introductory, as well as advanced one, as well as our Outlook integrations, our Teams integrations. So I'll send that link here as well in the chat for you. Perfect. All right, so with that, I think we'll go ahead and conclude this call. But again, feel free to reach out to us, hi at affluence.com or support at affluence.com. One of the things that we want to do with our HIPAA solution is, again, to provide, a different approach to project and task management that you have today. As I understand, what happens is that there are many organizations that actually have strict requirement on security, data compliance, and so forth. So what we've taken is we've taken the core of Priority Matrix and then provided a HIPAA compliant way, and then bringing and porting that Microsoft Teams and Outlook integrations into the HIPAA solution. So that's something that we're continuing to improve. We'd love to get your feedback on the application. If there's missing capabilities that you miss from the standard app, please let us know. But other than that, keep an eye out on our HIPAA app, and you're going to see a lot more capabilities added as well. Thank you all.